Hi guys, welcome to our daily encounter. In both our Old Testament reading and our New Testament reading, we see the importance of remembering the past. In the Old Testament reading in the book of Esther, we see that it's important to remember the good things that have happened in the past. And in our New Testament reading, we see the importance of remembering the bad things that have happened in the past. In the book of Esther, we have them basically instituting a new holiday, that of Purim. And it was to be celebrated on the 14th and 15th of the 12th month every year. And that would remind Israel of the time when the Lord delivered them from their enemies, even while in a foreign country, there in Persia. They would remember that Esther was faithful in speaking to the king, even though it might mean her death. They'll remember Mordecai and the high position that he achieved because of his resilience and his working in the situation. And they remember some good things about their past. And perhaps most of all, remember how God is providentially looking over them, even in hard times. And so that was a good thing for them to remember. In the book of Acts, in Acts chapter 7, Stephen is speaking to the religious leaders, and he is giving them a history lesson. And it's not so much just to teach them, they already knew the story of their ancestors, but he's bringing it out to show them that they are doing the same thing that their ancestors had done. They had rejected Moses initially when Moses felt the calling to deliver his kinsmen from Egyptian bondage, and Moses killed the Egyptian. The next day there was two Hebrew slaves arguing with each other, and Moses tries to break them up and says, hey, don't be arguing, let's get together. And the one that was the antagonist in the situation, he turns to Moses and says, who made you a ruler and a judge over us? Are you going to kill me the same way you killed the Egyptian? And Moses flees. Well, Stephen's making the point that the people in his current generation were doing the same thing, that Jesus had come with a calling to deliver the people, to bring freedom to the people, and they had rejected him and basically said the same thing. Who made you a ruler and a judge over us? And they actually crucified Christ because of it. And so they needed to see that they were doing the same thing that their ancestors had done. But then he continues on in the history story, and he talks about the wilderness wanderings after Moses does come back down and they are delivered from Egyptian bondage and go into the wilderness. The tabernacle is built, and God gives them a covenant. And even then, they rebel, they worship other gods, they worship, of course, the golden calf. Time and time again, they would rebel and not follow after the true God. And this also continued as the temple was constructed. Soon after David got everything ready for it. Solomon was actually the one who constructed the temple. And from that point on, when the prophets would come, they wouldn't listen to the prophets. They'd actually have them killed. They would mistreat them. And Stephen's saying the same thing towards them in his current generation, that they were doing the same things. There were prophets being sent to Israel, to the religious leaders, to tell them that this is the time. This is the end time. This is the time when God is bringing in his kingdom. And they were just persecuting those who the Lord was sending to them, prophet after prophet. And Stephen would be the first recorded martyr that would fall at the hands of these people. And so Stephen is saying, just as the people of old times were hard-hearted, just as they rebelled against Moses, just as they rebelled against the prophets, so you're doing the same thing. And it ended up getting Stephen stoned. But it was something that needed to be said. It was a message that they needed to hear. And so we see there that sometimes people need to remember the bad things that happened in the past so that they don't imitate and fall back into those old patterns. And so remembering the past and remembering bad things is important as well. So how does this relate to us in our spiritual experience? Well, it has a lot of importance to us. We could think of it in terms of different generations, previous generations that have gone on before us. We can look at some of the things that they did right, some of the good accomplishments that our spiritual forefathers had accomplished, and remember those, celebrate those things, try to emulate those things, be inspired by those things, and use those things to help us move forward in the spiritual life. Likewise, we can look at those who've gone before us, who gave us a bad example of what not to do, and try to keep ourselves off of that pathway. And when we see ourselves beginning to drift off in that same direction, to recall what happened with them and say, I don't want to follow after that path. I want to go my own path. I want to go the right path. I want to go really down God's path. And so that can be important as well. But even to personalize it even more, we could even look in our own lives. As we look back in our own lives in the past, and we see the mistakes that we made in the past, and we see the bad consequences that we suffered because of the mistakes that we have made, it's important for us to remember those things. Yes, there's a sense in which we move forward, we move past those things, we're forgiven, and we want to move past them. But at the same time, we don't want to forget the bad fruit that came out from those circumstances, not for the sake of beating ourselves up, but for the sake of warning, so that we don't walk that way again, to remind ourselves, hey, I went that way before, and it didn't turn out good for me. I don't want to go that way again. And to remember the bad things and not want to emulate those things again. But at the same time, we could look back in our lives and see the times when we were close to the Lord, when we were walking dedicated to Him. Maybe we could remember the time at our conversion when perhaps our passion for the Lord was the greatest, when we were walking, 3 feet off the ground, loving the Lord, sharing the gospel with everyone we came into contact with, just high on life. Again, real passionate for the Lord. We can remember those times and say, you know what? I want to go back to that heart that I had back then. And maybe I've been a Christian for too long and it's become too repetitious, too mundane. I want to go back to the time when it was fresh. And remember those times when I was really passionate for the Lord, and try to go back to those times and emulate those things once again. So whether we're talking about looking at the past as far as our ancestors, spiritual ancestors, or even maybe our physical ancestors, or we're looking at our own personal lives, it's always good to remember the past. Remember the good things that happened in the past, the accomplishments, the things that the Lord has done for us in the past, but also to remember the bad things that have happened as well. And both can help us to navigate the future as we move ahead, and help us to live a more honorable life, a life that's more well-pleasing to the Lord. So let's try to think about these things today as we do our reading. I do thank you guys for watching the video today. Hope you guys have a great day. Love you guys. God bless.